Welcome to TeaBookClub, TeaBookClub.org. Every month we read a different book and we meet on the last Sunday of the month to discuss it online, around the world, and share our thoughts and ideas. I'm going to read for 5 minutes, just a short section from this month's book, which is A Social History of Tea by Jane Pettigrew and Bruce Richardson. Really good book. Jumping in at page 100. American women become political over tea. News of the Boston Rebellion eventually made its way to the Carolinas and the bustling inland port of Edenton. In an act of solidarity, residents there assembled a shipload of corn, pork, and other provisions for the hungry families of Boston suffering from a British embargo placed upon their port. One Edenton resident was determined to make an equally strong statement to King George III. On October 25, 1774, Mrs. Penelope Barker organised at the home of Mrs. Elizabeth King 51 women who formed an alliance wholeheartedly supporting the American cause against taxation without representation. Mrs. Barker asked the assembled women to sign a letter she had addressed to King George, stating, "She would not drink any more tea, nor wear any more British cloth. Furthermore, many ladies of this province have determined to give memorable proof of their patriotism and have accordingly entered into the following honourable and spirited association. I send it to you to show your fair countrywomen how zealously and faithfully American ladies follow the laudable example of their husbands, and what opposition your matchless ministers may expect to receive from a people thus firmly united against them." The women realised that, by signing this petition, they were committing an act of treason. Whereas the rebellious men in Boston hid their identities by dressing as Native Americans, these bold women proudly identified themselves with a signature. This act of defiance is widely recognised as the first example of American women claiming a voice in public discourse. There was one problem with Mrs. Barker's declaration. Her husband John was stationed in London as the Carolina colony's appointed agent to Parliament. When word came that his treacherous wife had organised a rebellion at home, he was forced to flee to France and did not return to Edenton until 1778. Rumours of war continued to spread throughout the colonies. Those worries were mentioned in the October 1st, 1774 diary entry of New Jersey homemaker Jemima Condict. She wrote, "It seems we have troublesome times coming, for there's a great disturbance around the earth, and they say it is the tea that caused it. So then, if they will quarrel about such a trifling thing as that, what must we expect but a war, and I think at least fear it will be so." On the morning of April 19, 1775, shots were exchanged by colonials and British soldiers at Lexington and Concord. Men were killed and a revolution began. Boston was soon under British siege, and before that tumult was climaxed by a costly British victory at Boston's Bunker Hill, the Continental Congress had chosen George Washington as Commander-in-Chief of its armed forces. Jemima Condict's prediction had come to fruition, and troublesome times had surely begun. Chinese-American tea trade begins. 7 years of severe fighting followed before the colonists in North America won their formal independence from the British Empire. In 1783, the British signed the Paris Treaty with the colonial representatives. The colonists celebrated and enjoyed their hard-won victory. However, the joyous feeling of success was quickly overshadowed by economic difficulties. The economy of the newly formed nation was beset by depression and inflation. Such difficulties dampened the jubilation of the Founding Fathers and the fighters of the Revolutionary War. Britain, which had lost the war, tried to win over former colonists through economic coercion. Old trade routes were closed to the Americans as Britain sought to put enough economic pressure on individual states to force them, one by one, to return to Mother England. For a time, the British policy seemed to work, and some Americans felt bitter over the victory. It was hard to enjoy their freedom from Britain when the national fiscal system was on the brink of collapse and inflation was unbearable. A pound of tea cost $100, while an army private salary was only $4 per month. The European wars that followed the French Revolution helped open new markets for the American tea trade by collapsing trade barriers and allowing American ships to be common carriers of goods to Europe. In China, there was great demand for furs and sandalwood, which were easily procured by American businessmen eager to trade these resources for cargoes of tea. By the late 1780s, the new American tea trade flourished. The Empress of China was the first American ship to sail directly to China. The vessel left New York Harbor on February 22, 1784, carrying an American trade delegation and a shipment of ginseng for sale to unknown Chinese buyers. The impressive merchant ship had been built in Boston the previous year. This historic business and diplomatic venture was financed with $120,000 from several wealthy American merchants, including Robert Morris. The Empress arrived in the busy port of Guangzhou, Canton, on August 28, 1784, after a 6-month journey of some 18,000 miles. And that's 5 minutes, but I'm just going to finish this section. During the ship's stay, Chinese and American people traded goods and expressed goodwill and hospitality. The ship and its delegation stayed in Guangzhou until December 28, 1784, and returned triumphantly to New York on May 11, 1785, after a round-trip voyage of 14 months and 24 days. Its cargo of 44 tons of Hyson and Bohea tea and other China produce was sold for a net profit of over $30,000, or a little more than 25% on a return on investment. Finally, the era when Britain monopolized the tea trade in North America was gone for good, and direct Chinese-American tea sales grew steadily. With the increase of population and wealth, the American people demanded larger and larger quantities of tea. Export of tea from Guangzhou to American ports on American ships increased dramatically, and America was prepared to place its own tax on tea. In the spring of 1789, George Washington was elected president, with John Adams as his vice president. Thomas Jefferson had just arrived in Monticello from his diplomatic post in Paris. To organize his foreign policy, Washington named Jefferson as Secretary of State. The newly formed government set the levy on tea at 15 cents per pound for black tea, 22 cents per pound for green imperial, and 55 cents per pound for young Hyson. The new Secretary of State's beloved young Hyson green tea had suddenly become more expensive. And if you'd like to join Tea Book Club or follow what we're doing, head over to TeaBookClub.org, and the link is below as well. And you can sign up either for free, where you just get a monthly email with the book that we're reading, or subscribe and you can join the monthly chat. We do catch-up videos and a whole host of other benefits as well. Thank you.